What are some good exercises for rotator cuff strengthening, injury prevention, and shoulder mobility? We've been getting this question quite a bit, and today I want to share with you my own personal routine and favorite exercises for this. So you're probably watching this video because you have some kind of pain or discomfort in your shoulder, or your shoulder joints are just not working like they used to, and you're trying to figure out why and how to remedy this. To get to that point, let's take a look at the most common positions and conditions that cause issues and cause pain over time. In this day and age, or just general human function, your arms tend to be out in front of you most of the time. Whether you're sitting at a desk, working on your keyboard, with your sitting in your chair and your back's kind of hunched over, or you're working overhead, stuff like that, your arms are out in front of you and they're internally rotated. So what that's going to lead to is, instead of having this nice posture where your spine is neutral and your shoulders are pulled back the way they should be, it just leads to this rounding of the back and shoulders coming internally rotated over time. And then what that does is these chest muscles, the front delts, they become overactive, so they're getting stronger. There's more muscle tissue here because you're working out in front of you, but they're also getting stiffer and less mobile because there's more muscle here. So they're basically just pulling everything together and rounding those shoulders forward. And that's creating muscle imbalances in this shoulder joint. So the shoulder joint is a very complicated joint. It has the most degrees of freedom out of any joint in your entire body. Because of that, there's tons of muscles that have been recruited or that are put in place here to keep this joint stable so that it stays together and your shoulder doesn't just fall out of its socket. So without getting too long-winded here, there's basically two muscle groups that are around and surrounding the shoulder joint. You have the big muscles on the outside, which you're probably familiar with. You got the pecs, you got the traps, you have the deltoid muscle, and then you have the rear delts and your lat muscles. All of that is responsible for moving this shoulder around. And then you also have that other layer underneath of the big muscles, which is referred to as the rotator cuff. And a lot of people always talk about the rotator cuff, but they really don't understand exactly what it is. All it is four smaller muscles that are underneath of the big outside tissue, and they're attached between your humerus bone and your scapula bone. And they're surrounding that humerus and scapula, and all they do is push that humerus into the socket in the scapula. And where we can run into problems is when our arms and everything are always out in front of our bodies and internally rotated. That can cause some of the rotator cuff muscles on the back side, which are responsible for external rotation, to become weaker. And what that does is that humerus bone will actually move around and shift to a not optimal position inside of that socket, and that is where the pinching and the pain and discomfort can come in. So what we're gonna do here is strengthen those muscles on the back side to help pull that humerus bone down into the optimal position inside of that socket, so that there's plenty of room for the other muscles to do their job and not become impinged. Let's walk through my shoulder mobility routine, which I usually do a few times a week before my normal workouts. And what I like to start with is resistance band pass-throughs. So to do this, you're gonna grab a 41-inch band, and the goal is to get yourself to a point where you're about shoulder width apart with the hands, and you're gonna keep your arms straight and locked during this, and then we're just going to sweep our arms right around at a big arc over our head, and then behind our spine, and then all the way down. I like to pause kind of like right in this area because this is where you get the biggest stretch, and then we're just coming right back around. And if it's too difficult or really like you feel a lot of pain and stress, you can always grab the band a little bit further apart while you're doing this, and then work yourself towards the inside as you stretch out. You'll notice as you're doing these reps, you're gonna get looser and looser, and they're gonna feel easier and easier. And that's usually when I like to work myself closer together with my hand position. And that just helps me to loosen up, get everything ready to rock and roll. And with this, I usually do about 2 sets at 10 reps of pass-throughs, and that's it. All right, next up, we're gonna do a pec stretch. So you're gonna need like a pole, like a squat rack or a wall, and then we're gonna put our arm in about a 90 degree here, and then we're gonna rest that forearm right up against the wall, and then we're gonna keep our spine nice and vertical, parallel to our forearm here. And then what I'm gonna do is push forward, but I don't wanna lean forward. I wanna push my whole spine and everything forward so that I'm stretching this pec, stretching this shoulder, and you may need to creep your hand up just a little bit as you're getting into this exercise so you can feel a really good stretch here. And once you feel a really good stretch, I want you to hold it, keep that pressure on it, keep that stretch going, and we're gonna do 2 sets of 30-second stretch for each arm. All right, so next up, we're going to be doing some external rotation with our elbow pinched down to our side. So what we're gonna be doing, we're gonna take our arm 90 degrees with the arm, and then we're gonna pinch it down to our side. And to know that you're doing this right, or if you're learning it for the first time, you can have like a towel or just something to pinch and hold here. And what we're gonna do is just pivot our arm into an external rotation. So we're gonna start on the inside, and then we're gonna pivot it out as far as we can go while keeping a neutral spine and keeping that 90 degree and keeping this towel or whatever pinched underneath of our arm. And then we're gonna add some band tension right here. And I like to keep the band tension, basically, if this is at a 90, you want that band tension to be kind of going down, off and down towards the floor. I mean, you can be at a horizontal, but it's better if you're like 10 to 30 degrees below a horizontal. So like waist height or whatever for the anchor point. And then get some tension on this band. And then you're just gonna pivot this out, and you wanna set this angle up so you can basically turn your body towards or away from the band to help set that resistance. But we want to make sure that we get to that same point of this is what you can maximally achieve without resistance, and you want to make sure you can get to that same point with resistance. So you're going to get to that same point, and you may need to step towards the anchor point or turn a little bit towards the anchor point to help set that resistance. And then we're just going to do 15 reps here. And I do 2 sets of 15 reps with each arm. The next exercise I like to do is pull aparts. So we're gonna grab ourselves a 41-inch band, and I like to do an underhand grip here because it's external rotation. So we're gonna work external rotation, and we're also going to engage more of the back side of the shoulder muscle. So we're gonna be working those rear delts, rhomboids, traps, and get that stuff warmed up, and then we're also gonna be working on building strength. So I'm gonna grab myself a band, underhand grip with about a shoulder width grip on this thing, and then all you're doing is keeping your arm straight and pulling it apart, big squeeze at the top, let it down nice and slow. And this one we're gonna do 2 sets of 10 to 15 reps, focused on nice and controlled reps here, and increase that resistance on your second set if you can. And that is it for the pull aparts. All right, so the last exercise that I do in my warm-up routine is face pulls with a high anchor point and a 41-inch band. Again, we're focusing on mobility and working those external rotators to try to build them up, right? So I get a decently, or a semi-wide grip here, and then I'm reaching out overhead to that high anchor point, and then just pulling this back, and at the same time I'm pulling out and externally rotating. So I'm going to start like this, and then I'm going to open them up and really squeeze at the top, and then reach forward and set it back. And you want to make sure you get enough band in between your hands here so that you can spread it apart without overstretching the band. So I usually like to get, I don't know, maybe about a foot between my hands, and then pulling back and out. And if you got to pull this thing over your head a little bit, that's totally fine. You want to get all the way back and open, and then pulling it apart for that external rotation, keeping that core pulled in nice and tight, and a big squeeze, keeping that spine as neutral as possible, and really working on that external rotation. And with these, I'll usually do about 3 sets from 10 to 15 reps, and and I always like to bump that band resistance up as I progress through these. So that's my shoulder mobility routine, and I kind of learned that to implement this the hard way, working through injuries and things like that over the years. And obviously I put a lot of emphasis on training the big muscles, just like everybody else. Like, you want to work the big muscles, the big lifts, but you have to take care of the little muscles too. Otherwise, it's going to make you that much more susceptible and prone to injury. So I really encourage you to implement some kind of a shoulder routine like this. And shoulders are particularly important because, like I said before, they are the most complex joint on the body, and there's a lot of musculature that's going on in this area that you need to be sure that you're keeping it balanced and bringing up everything together. Otherwise, those imbalances are what's going to cause problems down the line. So if you like this content, be sure to smash that like button. If you want to see more of this, click on some of the on-screen links to our workout playlists or exercises. We have lots and lots of content, and I would encourage you to continue watching. Be sure to click that subscribe button if you want to get notified every time we launch new content. And if you need any bands or accessories, please head over to clenchfitness.com, and we'll see you next time.